Hi and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar about custom solutions. My name is Karel van Heulen. I am Product Manager at Televic Conference, and today I'm joined by my colleague Joris de Man, who is Project Manager and Custom Solutions Engineer at Televic Conference. Welcome.
Thank you.
So this webinar will take around 30 minutes. We will have also, like previous times, a poll or 3 different polls, which give you a chance to give Amazon gift cards. So please stay alert and answer all 3 questions. You will also be able to watch afterwards the webinar, so it will be available on our website within a few hours. If you have any questions, you can always ask them through the question tab. So please ask them there and not in the chat function, but in the questions tab. So let's start with our webinar. As you know, Televic Conference is well known for our customized conference equipment to meet the diverse needs of our different meeting rooms. So from corporate boardrooms to education or institutions, parliaments, courtrooms or authorities, Televic Conference meets all demands for personalized equipment. We will show you during this webinar different pictures and different references of our customization capabilities. But before we dive into that, maybe let's first answer the question, why would you invest in customized solutions? What's the point? Well, first of all, of course, customization is meant to meet very specific conference room sizes or layouts or requirements. And also, sometimes it's just about branding, having a tailored design to align with an organization's branding. And although the price might be a little bit more expensive, you can save cost in the end by not having to adjust your furniture. So also preventing unnecessary features or unnecessary items that are irrelevant to an organization need will save you costs. And last but not least, you as an integrator or as a distributor, you can secure your project in the tender phase by proposing a very unique solution for the end customer that only you can provide and not a competitor. Okay, so that's why you would invest into custom solutions. Now, why or how does Televic stand out in these custom solutions? First of all, we do big projects, but also very small ones. So there is no minimum order quantity. So you can start from a single customized unit. For example, if you have a chairperson unit and all the rest has normal standard equipment, that's perfectly possible. So you can mix and match chairperson versus standard units for delegates. We can also align with specific questions from architects regarding color, size or shape. And as said, although maybe a little bit higher in price, you will save cost in the end by not having to adjust your furniture. Now let's have a look to some specific projects. For example, here we have the EPO in Germany, where we had to, let's say, replace an existing brand by our solution, and it had to fit in specific dimensions. So in the front part, you could put a channel selector and voting items, and then in front, you could put the microphone and speaker. Another example is here in the European Parliament, where we have a lot of customized units. And the question here was to have a shock-mounted microphone and also deported headphones. So the headphone on a separate place from the other items. So also there we could provide a solution with a shock-mounted microphone and deported headphone. I talked about specific furniture. If you have heritage protected furniture, of course you need to put, or you have to align with the dimensions of that furniture. So here we had to separate the microphone and the voting items. The voting buttons had also to fit into the specific dimensions and also had a need of specific colors, as you see here in this picture. Another example is in Palermo, where we have also our units available. So And in general, we serve different markets. In fact, with our custom solutions, we serve all our markets where we are present with our conference equipment. So institutions, corporate, rental, authorities, city councils, parliaments, and so on. All right, so before we dive into more details with my colleague Joris, maybe we'll start with the first poll, first question. And that's a question towards you. What is for you the main driver for customization? Is it mostly about branding and prestige? Is it about replacement in historical furniture where you have adapted to the current dimensions? Is it about specific requirements from customers regarding size, color, material, and so on? Is it about functional requirements like having a power socket or a USB connector? Or is it really about you wanting to secure a project in a tender procedure? I give you a few seconds. Please answer your question in the poll section of your interface and not in the chat. And then we'll continue with my colleague Joris, who will give more insights in the specifics of our custom capabilities.
Thank you for the nice introduction. So, to discuss some of our capabilities, we will show you some of the examples of units that we already made or that we have offered in several projects. The first one we start with is probably the most ugly unit that we have ever designed, but still it is a nice example of showing that not a specific size or rectangular form or whatever is required. In this unit we also had some very specific charger sockets that had to be included. We can also do integrations in armrests. We see there's a lot of demand for these type of integrations, so the specific request for the press room of the European Commission was that the journalists were able to listen to a translated feed while also being able to pose a question. In the video you just saw, we saw the activation of the microphone while there was also a request to speak. As I mentioned, armrest integrations are also possible with our gooseneck microphones. This project has just been delivered, in fact. It's a dual delegate armrest integration with gooseneck microphone, including the identification for both sides of the armrest, voting, channel selection, so everything you require. We even had the two microphone buttons to allow for the camera tracking in this project. We remain in the armrests. It doesn't always have to have a microphone. The audience might also be required to listen to a translated feed. The request here was quite specific, namely that our audio jack had to be hidden beneath the plate to make sure that the headphones couldn't be disconnected and thus perhaps taken along with the person of the audience. I mentioned specific materials, so this project that was actually done for our colleagues of France required a plate that was removable. This was a brushed steel finish on this plate with some magnetic tape on the backside, thus being able to replace that one front panel by another one if required. We can have tabletop units customized as well. We are looking now at a unit that has been delivered for the WHO, in which we had the full Monty of the audio unit, but then twice. I mentioned custom brackets. This can also be done for single units, naturally in this city council in the Netherlands. The advantage of the metal bracket that we delivered is the directivity of the loudspeaker, thus having a better intelligibility in the entire room. We have other materials that are possible, so we are looking at a picture of the Court of Justice in which a brushed brass front plate has been provided. As mentioned, separate possibilities and options. On the top left corner we have separate roll colors, always possible. Right bottom corner we have a brushed steel finish and then another project with a brass finish. Then a very specific one where I want to go in some detail with is the sublimation technique. I actually have the unit here with me. What's happening for these types of units is we take a metal plate and we're actually pulling a picture through the varnish, thus making sure it's scratch-free, and you can do whatever picture you would like. I would have to say try to limit the amount of pictures because we actually do have a cost per picture taken. Don't put a head of every delegate on each unit. Some specific logos are possible as well. We are now looking at, again, a brass plate, a polished brass plate this time, with engraving of the logo, and then you might have noticed it's an Italian project due to the buttons on the voting. I mentioned the screening. It could be that they require a specific screening for the buttons. So for the House of Representatives in Jordan, we actually made a custom Unicast unit. Our Unicast units, our multimedia units, are thus possible to have customization as well. The custom logos, as mentioned, some examples on one hand of a multicolored logo, on the left bottom corner of a monocolored logo, all is possible. We can add several connectors. One of the advantages of adding this in the custom plate is that you don't have a lot of mix and match plates on top of the table. You can all integrate it in one and nice clean plate, but I do have to mention that these connections, we just provide the connectors itself. They have to be connected by the integrator to whatever source that might be required. Something we're actually quite proud of is the introduction, or the inclusion of the tactile references on the buttons. For these cases, we in fact went talking to the Braille League and asked them what type of tactile reference do we need to take. They explained to us that there's no one specific dialect in every country in the world, and that we might be better off in taking some general tactile references. So for example, on the voting, we here have the numbers 1 to 5 in Braille, but on the channel selector and the microphone button, there's a specific reference. In the next slide, you will see some more detail of what we actually put on those buttons. Okay, now time for a short quiz. What is the minimum amount of units that Televic requires to start with customization? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think hard about this question. And off to some other examples of integration. So, I already mentioned briefly the possibility of a Unicast integration. This project, again of our colleagues of France, actually started as a request for customization. We went through some options, but in the end, we thought of the possibility of including our standard brackets and Unicast units. A custom bracket was made to hold the standard brackets, but this nice picture is the result of that work. There's other standard items that we can use for integration, and that is the F-box. If you're not willing to go through a mechanics made by Televic, for example, you can use the F-box. It's for audio-only integrations, where you can install directly in the table or have a plate of your own made. And then we also have our integrations with microphone and screen lift providers. So we are actually working with all big ones in the market, I believe. And I'd like to take the time to explain a bit how we challenge or tackle this process. So the next slides might be a bit too much information, so I'll take the liberty of just taking the interface we have on that slide with me. This is an interface in a box. It is what it says, it's just an interface, it won't do anything by itself. The Unibox does have a HDMI connector, the standard RJ45 ports, and the DIN connector for the power. On the other side, we have some connections available like the microphone connector, the channel selection and voting, the USB connector for a touch display connection, or a nameplate, or a webcam, or all of those three together. We are actually delivering this part to the microphone lift integrator together with the electronics, our standard modules that we have on our audio-only units. These electronic modules are delivered together with customized cables, and these customized cables will be installed by those lift manufacturers to have a full functional conferencing unit. We can do this for Unicos, and does Unibox provide the full multimedia experience? This is not necessary, however, we can also do it for audio only. Maybe some explanation about the full process. So, since we noticed that a lot of people are interested in the possibilities of customizations, we actually made a for everyone accessible configurator online. And there's a link on our website, of which you will now see a brief demo.
This is the site of our configurator. We can choose for a delegate or chairman unit or a listen-only unit. Let's go for a discussion unit. First, you are requested to give some dimensions of the unit. So let's say we go for a unit of 34 centimeters by 80 centimeters in height. We need to provide the cutout dimensions, which might be important, as Sofian mentioned, not to have to adjust the furniture. So some margins need to be respected. Let's say 70, and then a built-in depth. Let's also go for 70 millimeters. I now get a grid on which you can already zoom in and see our logos, and I can start adding some functionalities, which you see on the right side of the screen. Suppose I require a speaker and an audio jack, I can just place it. We will most probably need a microphone connector. Microphone button would be useful as well. And there we go. Some additional items, maybe the badge. If you want, you can also put it vertically. So then I just press it again to have it vertically. And here you see it won't fit. This is due to the cutout dimensions, which I mentioned earlier. You see it's in red. If I put it horizontally again and press it again, there we go. You have sufficient space. There we go. On the next page, you have other possible integrations. In this case, I would like a USB charger and maybe also a socket. We continue. We can choose the type of corners. They're rounded or squared. We can have the hidden screws, the visible ones. The icons you can also adjust. In this case, there's not really anything written down, so it won't make a difference. And we can also choose for another color. Let's say I want it in white. We again continue to the next page. And this is where we make sure that the designs aren't stolen, let's say. So each end client or integrator will need to fill in all information to make sure that we receive the lead and then can transfer it to you, to our distributor. They can, however, make print screens or whatsoever to also directly contact you in case it's necessary. The leads generated through the configurator will thus be transferred, and we invite you all to play with the configurator test in real life for your specific cases. If there's anything that you can't make through the configurator, please note that we are still available to help you out in case it has to be very specific. Thank you.
The process itself, as my colleague Karel had already mentioned, we are not only reacting, we're also trying to be in a preventive mode. So either for tender preparation or in a quotation phase already, the process that we might adhere to is, on one hand, a feasibility check. How difficult is the customization that is required? So we will send whatever request that we might not be able to do as quickly as normally to our R&D departments. After that feasibility has been approved, we will provide you with a proposal about costing and also provide you presentation drawings. These drawings can then be added in your tender answer to have a more authenticated feel for the decision makers. We presume that you will win the project, so at that point we will receive your order. We will request a prepayment. It's customization, so we cannot start the manufacturing process without a prepayment. And then we'll create specific material numbers and mechanical drawings. As soon as you confirm that we can go ahead and start production, so a actual confirmation of the drawings, all that needs to be done is pick up as soon as those custom units have been produced. The plus-minus lead time, depending on what type of customization that is required, is 10 to 12 weeks. Then let's go to some specific references which we are quite proud of. On first hand, we have the city of Parchim in Germany. So it has a whole bunch of the customization options that we already talked about. There was, on one hand, the tactile references. We have the USB charger blocks for both delegates. It's a dual delegate unit and they combine one microphone. And in general, the room itself is quite pretty as well. The World Intellectual Property, a very big organization. We were able to renew this entire room through our customization possibilities. We talked about separate colors and possible sizes of units. Well, this Shura Council in Qatar has them all. In the Turkish parliament, we also had a Unicast customization. Here the request was to have the microphones centralized, while the Unicast units were at the left and right side. Nice example as well. We already talked about the European Court of Justice. Again, a picture of one of these rooms. We are quite proud of the projects we are doing with them. And then, as you might have seen in the first part of the webinar with my colleague Karel, well, the hemicycle of Brussels, but also the hemicycle of Strasbourg, we are actually renovating this year. Again, a pop quiz. Is the configurator that we have on our website accessible to all persons? I'll give you a couple of seconds again. And now I'll invite my colleague Karel back for the finishing of our webinar.
Thank you very much, Joris. I think it was a very insightful explanation. I would like to thank you all for this webinar. Maybe just for information, you will receive a link to this webinar afterwards, but also on our website, you will see the webinar, the recording of this webinar, as well as the recordings of all previous webinars. So you can just visit our website under support and then webinar, you will see all those webinars. I would like also to invite you to our next webinar. Our next webinar is about our entire Televic portfolio, which we will be sending out May 24th. So please stay tuned for that, and you can already register through this link or on our website. To finalize, I would like also to invite you to follow all our social medias, and so you can stay up to date once you're also following us. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to see you back on our next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.